This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather, ho there, it's Jeff Cutter, and welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, to start the month of November, we have a little controversy. Have it. In 2017, the Houston Astros won Game 7 of the World Series on this day, November 1st, taking out the LA Dodgers and giving the state of Texas their first World Series in franchise history. Houston started life in 1962 as an expansion team. The other Texas team, the Texas Rangers, wouldn't come to Texas until 1972 after leaving Washington. So anyway, the Astros became the second team, and only the second team in postseason history to win 2 Game 7s in a postseason after the 1985 Kansas City Royals. Of course, the LDS is not best of 7, it's best of 5. So they had to win the LCS and the World Series in 7 games each. A World Series record was set. A combined total of 25 home runs by the Astros and Dodgers in this 7-game series. The Astros put up 15 of them. And then the Astros and Dodgers put up 8 home runs in Game 2 to set the all-time World Series record. George Springer was named the MVP after hitting 5 World Series in the World Series against the Dodgers to tie the Reggie Jackson and Chase Utley record of 1977-2009. All that. So, of course, this is a huge background. The Astros and Dodgers, people forget, used to fight each other in the NL West for spots. In 1980, the Astros had a 3-game lead with 3 to play in the 1980 season. They went to a 3-game series in Dodger Stadium. Dodgers would have to win every game to force a 1-game playoff. Ironically enough, at Dodger Stadium. And thankfully, though, the Dodgers did that. However, the Astros won game 163, if you will, mostly because the Dodgers didn't have anyone left to pitch, if you will. In 1981, the Astros and Dodgers were the 2 half champions of the NL West. With that strike-shortened season, they would face each other. The Dodgers actually lost games 1 and 2 at the Astrodome, but won games 3, 4, and 5 on home turf to basically move on to the LCS, which they, of course, took care of the Montreal Expos, to my chagrin, of course. And then won the World Series against the Yankees. So anyway, this was the first World Series since 1970 to have both teams with at least 100 wins during the regular season. That's amazing. So the Dodgers looked good. They were 91 and 36 at one point, but they slowed down through September, ending up with a 13 and 22 run, which really didn't do them any favors. They did win the NL West and was the number 1 overall seed. They swept the Diamondbacks and then took care of the Cubs in 5 games thanks to Kiki Hernandez's 3 home run game in Game 5 for the LCS. So the Dodgers had a good bullpen and all that. Corey Seager, despite having an injury that made him miss the NLCS, was on the Dodgers World Series roster. Dave Roberts was the first manager of Asian heritage ever in the World Series and the 4th African-American manager. Cody Bellinger was hot. Clayton Kershaw was doing well. He was doing decent in the playoffs, whereas normally he sucks. And Kenley Jansen looked decent. The Astros won 101 games and won their first American League West title. They moved to the American League in 2013 because baseball finally decided, let's go 2 leagues of 15 teams each. So the Stros and the Dodgers were in different leagues now. They were the number 2 seed in the AL. They took care of Boston, and then they took care of the Yankees in Game 7 on home turf. The Yankees shocked everyone by beating the Cleveland Indians, who won 22 straight games within the season, which was a modern-day record. And all that. Those Yankees of 2017 actually were down love 2 to the Indians before they won 3 games in the LDS, thanks to Didi Gregorius. Houston was going to their second World Series. Their first was in 2005 as they took on the Chi Sox. But Houston had their own issues. They had flooding from a Hurricane Harvey, and then they would wear Houston Strong patches on their uniforms. Manager A.J. Hinch said, "We're boosting moral support for the city." And just before the midnight deadline, the Astros got Justin Verlander from the Tigers. Verlander was hot, 9-0 with a 1.23 earned run average. He was named the ALCS MVP. So Houston and the Dodgers took on each other. So it was huge. The first pitches were ceremonial. Game 1 was thrown out by the family of Jackie Robinson, including his widow Rachel, who's still alive to this day. Fernando Valenzuela threw out the first pitch in Game 2. Game 3 was J.J. Watt, former Houston Texans defensive end. Game 4 was Haley Dawson, who was a 7-year-old from Nevada who had a 3D printed hand. She actually was the first person to throw out the ceremonial first pitch in all 30 MLB stadiums. She had Poland syndrome. Wow, 3D printed hand. George W. Bush would throw out the pitch in Game 5. Orel Hershiser and Tony Lasorda threw out the ceremonial first pitch in Game 6. And Game 7 was Sandy Koufax throwing the first pitch. So anyway, Game 1, Astros-Dodgers was 39 Celsius, the hottest in major World Series history. Clayton Kershaw versus Dallas Keuchel. It was a tight game, 3-1. Chris Taylor hit a home run off Keuchel on the first pitch of the game. It was the third home run to lead off a game in Dodgers postseason history, following Davey Lopes in 1978 and Carl Crawford in 2013. Alex Bregman would hit a home run to tie, but Justin Turner hit a 2-run home run to make it 3-1, and the game was over. It was 2 hours and 28 minutes, the shortest World Series contest since 1992's Game 4. Wow. Anyway, Game 2 was a little bit colder, only by a few degrees, 34 Celsius or 93 Fahrenheit. But this was when Houston and LA went off for 8 home runs. It was Rich Hill versus Justin Verlander as the starting pitchers. The home runs just had the big mood. Houston actually scored 2 runs in the 10th inning before the Dodgers tied with 2 of their own. And then the Astros put up 2 in the 11th. Dodgers only put up 1. It was back and forth, really back and forth. And the funny thing for the Dodgers was they only had 5 hits the whole game, and 4 of them were dingers. That's hard to believe. Anyway, the home runs for Houston were Marlon Gonzalez, Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, and George Springer. The Dodgers countered Jock Peterson, Corey Seager, Yasiel Puig, and Charlie Culberson. It was just amazing. And the Astros finally won a World Series game for the first time in their franchise history. Now is Game 3. Yu Darvish versus Lance McCullers. The Astros put up 4 runs in the second inning to win on their way to winning 5-3. In fact, Brad Peacock pitched 3 2/3 innings, and one of the longest postseason, the most innings for a postseason save in history since Ken Clay in 1978 with the Yankees. However, Yuri Gurriel, after hitting a home run in the second inning, would make a racial insensitive gesture in the dugout. He stretched the sides of his eyes and mouthing the word Chinito, which means little Chinese boy. Of course, Gurriel is from Cuba, and we'll call him a Chinese boy, but Darvish is from Japan. Nevertheless, this was pathetic. Gurriel did apologize and said that anyone from Asia is called a Chino in Cuba. And he did know that the term was offensive to Japan from having played there. Rob Manfred, the commissioner, decided to suspend Gurriel for the first 5 games of the 2018 season, but let him play in the World Series. Big mistake. I think that would have been the TSN turning point for the Dodgers. Anyway, the Dodgers would score 5 in the 9th in Game 4 to win 6-2. So this was huge. So anyway, Alex Wood and Charlie Morton were on the mound to start the games. Anyway, Game 5 was the Astros and the Dodgers. It was a hectic game. 25 runs were scored in the 10-inning contest, but Houston scored in the bottom of the 10th to win the game. People forget that the Dodgers actually were down 12-9 in the 9th and then took care of things with 3 runs in the 9th, but they couldn't do it. So the Astros became the second team in MLB history to come back twice from 3 runs down in a World Series game. The Toronto Blue Jays, in their famous Game 4 win in 1993, 15-14 against the Phillies. This World Series set the record for most players to hit a home run, 14 total. And of course, This was the highest scoring World Series game since Marlins Indians Game 3 in 1997, which was 14-11 for the Marlins. And by time, Game 5 lasted 5 hours, 17 minutes, which is the second longest by time. Well, that would be, of course, shattered the next year. Dodgers were up against it. Verlander versus Hill. George Springer hit a home run, which that made him his fourth home run this series. The Astros had the bases loaded in the fifth and fouled up. That was the TSN turning point. It's the Dodgers put up 2 runs in the sixth inning to win the game, 3-1. Game 7 was an epic one. It was actually 21 degrees, a far cry a week before than the 39 degrees. Well, this was the first Game 7, World Series Game 7 at Dodger Stadium. The Dodgers last went to a World Series Game 7 in 1965 against the Twins, in which they won in Minnesota, handing the Twins the only time the Twins in 3 World Series appearances, 65, 87, and 91, that they lost on home turf. It doesn't help that the Twins have yet to win, had not won a World Series road game. I kid you not. So anyhow, yeah. So this was huge. McCullers versus Darvish. But Houston came out running with 5 runs in the first 2 innings. Darvish did not last long. He only lasted 1 2/3 innings. Well, obviously. Brandon Morrow, former Blue Jay starter, who almost got a no-hitter for the Blue Jays in 2010. I remember watching that game. Came on to relieve Darvish. He became the first pitcher since Darrell Knowles in 1973 to pitch in all 7 games of a World Series. McCullers would only last 2 innings, which was weird. Up 5-0. Well, the Astros did win the game 5-1 and got their first championship in franchise history and giving Houston its first major title. Well, depending on whether you count this as major, but since the Houston Comets winning the WNBA title back in 2000, but people don't. It would be the Houston Rockets in 1995. But anyway, they ended their 56-year drought, which was the 3rd longest active drought in 2017, behind Cleveland and Texas of all teams. Springer was the World Series MVP award. And for the first time since 2002, a franchise broke their World Series streak. And it was actually the first time since 1972 that the AL team won a Game 7 World Series on the road. Wow. Carlos Correa actually said that he proposed to his girlfriend, Miss Texas USA, on live TV, and she accepted it. So anyway, the Astros and Dodgers both scored 34 runs in the game. The home run talent stats were huge. George Springer put up 5 home runs for Houston. Jose Altuve did 2. Alex Bregman 2. Carlos Correa 2. Yuri Gurriel 2. Marwin Gonzalez and Brian McCann each with 1. The Dodgers had Jock Peterson lead with 3. Yasiel Puig with 2. Cody Bellinger, Charlie Culberson, Corey Seager, Chris Taylor, and Justin Turner each having 1. It was amazing and all that. In fact, since 2005, this World Series was the third highest rated, behind 2009 and 2016. One of the biggest mistakes was sponsorship. MLB would sell sponsorships to all their postseason series. YouTube TV became the first presenting sponsor of the World Series. So it's the 2017 World Series presented by YouTube TV and all that. Kind of pathetic, don't you think? Oh no, I completely goofed. I forgot the Houston Dynamo won the MLS Cup in 2007. My apologies, soccer fans in Houston. But yeah, it's the first one in the Big Four American sports since 95 because Houston always had struggles. The sports books in Nevada actually lost $11 million because of the baseball thing. Houston held a parade for the Astros November 3rd, 2017. About 1 million people attended the parade. Springer and Altuve actually were on the cover of the November 13th issue of Sports Illustrated 2017, with Altuve holding the trophy. and Springer holding copy of the famous 2014 Sports Illustrated that actually predicted Houston would win the World Series in 3 years' time. Kind of weird how that foreshadowing happened. It was a huge boost for the city of Houston. All that. Yu Darvish became a free agent and chose not to be signed with the Dodgers because there was a lot of fan ire against him for his World Series outings. He was signed with the Cubs. The Dodgers would get back to the World Series in 2018 and appeared to have a tie-turning win in Game 3 on home turf, which lasted 18 innings. Sadly, though, Boston would come back in Game 4 from a 3-run deficit to win that game and win Game 5. So the Dodgers were upset. However, the Dodgers wouldn't be too upset 2 years later in 2020 as they won the World Series. It was amazing. In fact, every World Series since 2017, there's either been an Astros or a Dodgers team in it. The Astros would, of course, appear in the World Series 2019, and this time I picked them to win the World Series. Stupid move. Washington, of all freaking people, won the series in 7 games. But that wasn't the end of it. The 2017 World Series would be controversial because of all the stealing signs. And before the 2019 World Series, several Dodgers actually reached out to Washington players to say that Houston was stealing signs and all that. Mike Fiers, who played for the 2017 Astros, actually said that the Astros used technology to steal their parents' signs and relay it through slews and a trash can. MLB agreed, and AJ Hinch and general manager Jeff Luhnow were not just suspended for 1 season, they were fired by Houston. Alex Cora would end up being fired from Boston, too. And Carlos Beltran was going to manage the Mets, but he got implicated in the cheating scandal, so he couldn't really manage. Cora would be rehired in Boston for 2021. Well, AJ Hinch was named the Tigers manager a few days after the suspension was done. Other than Beltran, no other players were punished. It was just awful and all that. There actually were some stuff in popular culture. Wheel of Fortune, Pat Sajak quipped about the Astros. The answer for what are you doing category turned out to be banging on trash cans, which led to an Astros joke by Sajak. Because a notable method of the Astros sign stealing scheme was a banging of a trash can to signal off-pitch speed pitch was coming. Family Guy even jumped on this in December 2020, where the Griffins watching a fake 30 for 30 about the Astros. A man then appears on the screen in front of Hall of Fame plaques and a Dodgers jersey says, "We knew the Astros were stealing signs. Someone was back there banging on a trash can. We just couldn't figure out who." A camera pans over a fake photo of the Astros with explaining that nobody would reveal the mastermind of the trash can banging scheme before Oscar the Grouch appears in the picture. This World Series would also be kind of a personal issue for me because I picked the Dodgers to beat the Astros for the World Series. And of course, I picked with my mind, not my heart. If I picked with my heart, I definitely would have went with the Houston Astros to win because of Hurricane Harvey and all that. Little did I know that they were just basically cheating the system. That's how stupid it was. So when this thing happened in early 2020, I knew I missed the World Series pick. I decided to give a asterisk next to my 2017 performances. Now here's the thing though. In 2017, I had predicted everything right. Not baseball. Football, hockey, and basketball were all correct. I needed the World Series pick to go an unprecedented 4 for 4, which I rarely do, and I hadn't done in 10 years up to that time. So, of course, I decided to put an asterisk saying that, it was kind of cheating and all that. Now I know Houston could not get the 2007 title stripped from them because obviously, um, you know how what could happen. So anyway, so yeah, so I had a little bit of an asterisk, if you ask me. So what happened? So I gave myself a 3-0-1 mark for 2007, which obviously means that so I kind of tied in a sense. However, after going 4 for 4 last year in 2021 predictions, baseball, basketball, football, and hockey, I decided to take the asterisks off and say, I lost fair and square. So I take the L for the loss about the LA Dodgers, even though that I could claim it as my own. But that is not good because sometimes claiming victory is not the best option of everything. Right? Right. So yeah, the Astros may have cheated, but they cheated the system. But in the end, it brought goodness to the city of Houston because of Hurricane Harvey. I guess some people would be a little bitter, and I get the bitterness. I would be bitter too. But the Astros helped the city recover from Hurricane Harvey, even though they implicated themselves and became the most hated team in baseball today. I'm Jeff Diamond. I did.